Okie dokie, so we are live. Please do let me know in the comments that you can see me okay. I'm not going to start until you can see and hear me. Vicky's looking after the chat as well, which is amazing. So Vicky, when you hear me say this, can you just send me a quick message and let me know that you can hear me, please? Because I can't really see the chat. So yes, just let me know that you can see and hear me, and then that'd be great, because there is a little bit of a lag on the live, but I'm yeah, all good. Brilliant. It's always a bit of a worry when we do these things, because I usually do stuff on Zoom and that all works great. And then when we start to do YouTube, it's all like, oh my goodness, everything's changed again. So great stuff. Absolutely brilliant. So lovely to see so many of you joining me. We are going to be drawing this hare's eye tonight. Now, we're not going to be going super fast. If you've joined me in my live draws before, when we've done sort of like quite a short live draw, you'll know that we kind of go a little bit speedy. Well, we're not going speedy tonight. We're going to concentrate on the eye. Hopefully we'll get it finished. I'm planning about sort of like a couple of hours. It might take a little bit less. Don't worry if you get too tired or you can't keep up or anything like that. I am going to go slower. I will show you my pencils, and I'll try and tell you the number of the pencils as well. And what I want to do is I want to explain exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, so that you can take that and put it onto your own pieces. Anybody who's sitting there feeling really nervous about doing it, please don't feel nervous. Nobody needs to feel nervous around me. It's just laid back. It's lovely. It's such a nice thing to do before Christmas, and hopefully you'll all really enjoy it. So we're going to get cracking. I'm working on, this is light fast paper that I've got here. It's I've got so many pads of paper, and I decided to use the light fast because it's sort of slightly smoother, but it's still got quite a lot of tooth. It is a creamy colour, which is why it doesn't look bright white. It's sort of like quite an off-white, and it takes quite a few layers, and it's just a really nice paper. So we're going to draw the hare's eye today. We've got all sorts of colours that I've chosen to bring into this, and what I really want to concentrate on are the values, so the lights and the darks. When people talk about values, it's the shading bit, it's your shadows, it's your midtones, it's your highlights. And values are incredibly important in artwork, in drawing, and in any kind of painting or anything. When it comes to realism, it's actually the values that make something look realistic, as well as the correct proportion and everything, rather than tiny details. You're going to have something looking much more realistic with correct values than you are by putting tons of details in. So that's what we're going to really, really concentrate on today, as well as bringing details and everything in too. So we're going to start off with our dark sepia. So I've chosen the Polychromos dark sepia, and it is number 175. This is a really, really great pencil. I tend to use this instead of or as well as black, but it's a good one to start off with because it's not too dark that it's a little bit scary, but it's dark enough to make sure that our values are sort of correct right from the beginning. What we're going to do is we're going to work on kind of a little bit around the eye in some of these darker areas, and the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to just jump straight in and do the eyeball, because I find it looks a little bit strange. If I just draw the eyeball, we go through stages where it looks like other things. Excuse me. And I want it to look like an eye. I don't know whether you're like me, when you look up in the clouds and stuff like that, and you see pictures and animals and houses and dogs and people and everything in the clouds. That's the same thing when I'm drawing as well. So I want it to look as eye-like as possible. So... so we're going to start off with the dark sepia. I'm actually going to sharpen this because this is a brand new pencil. Apologies if I cough. What happens is when I breathe, it just goes to the back of my... Hang on a sec. It should be okay. Right, so I've got a relatively sharp pencil here. And we're going to start by bringing this dark area in here around the eye. It is actually part of it's the back of the eyeball, if you like. It's the bit inside. And it's just a nice place to start. So we're just going to put our pencil on the line And we're just going to sort of bring a bit of an outline round. When you start a piece, it's always a little bit scary starting. You know, it's like, oh gosh, even if you've got the line art down, it's like, oh gosh, where do I start? And actually, just by following some of your lines where you know that it's correct is quite a good place to start. So this is a really good place to start, where we can just start to darken it. And once we've got pencil on the paper, it's plain sailing from then on. You know, we've started and it's all good. My pressure is quite light. Well, I'll show you my pressure on my hand. Hopefully you'll be able to see it here. So this is really light pressure. You can see that there. So I'm not indenting the skin. I'm going a little bit harder than that, just to make sure that I'm getting a relatively dark line up here. What I don't want is a very, very hard, dark ring around the eye, because that then is likely to indent the paper. And then it's going to be harder to get a softer line where we need it to be softer. So we want it to be a little bit softer up here. And then this bit up here is all a bit confusing on the photograph. There's like, I don't know, they look like little flea bites and all sorts on the top of the eyebrow there. And then we've got some eyelashes and everything. So up here, it's all a bit sort of fuzzy and, you know, so we'll just sort of bring a little bit of dark in there. We don't need to worry too much. This up here, this is the top eyelid and this is the bottom eyelid. Which might seem like, you know, well, yeah, Bonnie, we can see that, but actually it's very easy to pick the wrong line. It's very easy to think, for your brain to go, oh, this is the eyelid here, and then you think, well, what's this bit here? It's so easy just to pick the wrong line and see something differently. You know, which is why it's very, very important when you do your line drawing not to just rely on your line drawing. We want to be looking at the reference photo, and we want to be following the reference photo rather than believing that our line drawing is absolutely perfect. Even if it is absolutely perfect, it's still very easy to pick the wrong line. So you can see there I've just outlined my eye, which is great, and that's given us a really good place to start now. I'm just going to bring a little bit more around there. That's that dark bit there. Now we're working on the smoother paper, so we might need to sharpen our pencils a little bit more. I tend to work on pastel mat, and I don't really sharpen my pencils a huge amount on pastel mat. I tend to sort of work with a blunter pencil, but it does take the pigment better. You need a few more layers and you need to smoothen everything, but the pigment really does show up very well with very light pressure. With a hot press paper or a smoother paper, you need to use just a little bit more pressure. It's funny because people say, oh, you need, you know, with pastel mat it eats your pencils. I find the opposite. I find the hot press paper eats my pencils because I've got to keep them sharper. Okay, so I now want to fill this in. I want to fill it in. I'm going to go straight in with black. Okay, now a lot of artists say don't use black. I'm not one of those artists. I think black is a really fantastic colour for things that are black. It's good to have colour underneath or on the top to bring a little bit of richness through. But, you know, actually, if you use a little bit of hard pressure quite early on, you can get a really nice dark black in there. And this is black around here. So you might as well use black. It's quite sharp. We're just going to go in. I'm going to leave this little fiddly bit here because there's a little bit of highlight and everything in there. And I'm just going to go straight in. We're going to use little pencil strokes. Okay. Now that is a really, really good tip to get a vibrant dark black is to use a sharp pencil and little tiny pencil strokes in a round motion. When you start off, it's brilliant because it's like, yeah, this is really great. If you've got quite a large area to cover, if you're anything like me, you get a bit bored and your circles get bigger. But with something like this, we can get a really, really nice black. I'd get a lot of people saying to me, oh, my black's not dark enough. And the reason there is because what I think is because your pressure isn't quite hard enough. I'm not like pounding the paper, but my pressure's a little bit harder. Your pencil strokes are too far apart, and your pencil's probably not sharp enough. So you have to be a little bit brave with your pressure. If your black is going on and it's like a mid-grey, you need to use more pressure. And we want this to be really, really nice and dark around here. So I'm just little tiny pencil strokes. All feels a bit strange on YouTube. I haven't done a YouTube for a few months actually, and usually it's all done via Zoom, so I can usually hear people and see people. But now when we come up to the top there, obviously it's all a little bit sort of crazy with all of the stuff going on, so we're not going to come too far down with the black, but I'm going to bring a little bit of black into the top there. Again, I'm not going to go too dark just on that top bit just yet because of everything else that's going on, but I'm going to come round here, and then we're just going to go a little bit darker around here in that this little corner here, because that's quite dark. Now there's a tiny little bit of a catch light in there, which we're going to isolate. We're going to keep it free of any colour. You see how I've just left that little sort of slither free. When you're working with colour pencils and you're working on a smoother paper, you cannot get light colours over the top of dark. You can't get your white beautifully in over the top of the dark, and it is frustrating. There are things you can do. You can change the paper. Pastel matte allows for light over dark. You can use erasers if the pencil's good for that. The paper's good for that, or you can use a slice tool. Some people use gel pens. I tend to not use gel pens because they're not archival and they do end up going a bit yellowy. So on hot press paper like this, we just isolate it, which just means we leave it out. We leave the white bit out, and we'll just leave that for now. And now what we're going to do is we're going to work on the outside. So we're going to work on the eyelids. For that, we're going to pick up the walnut brown. So the walnut brown is here, and this is number 177. So we're using all polychromos for this particular drawing. I like the polychromos, particularly for eyes. They are slightly less opaque than other brands. And with them being slightly less opaque, it means that they're slightly more translucent, so you can actually see through the layers. And that's what I love about the polychromos, particularly for eyes. They're a really super pencil. They're harder and drier. So if you compare them to something like a Prisma, Castle, Lyra Polycolour, Arteza, some of those budget ones, or you compare it to Luminance or something like that, they're a much harder pencil, so they keep their point, and actually they blend beautifully. They blend really, really, really nicely. And you can use them with a little bit harder pressure, and you can use them with softer pressure, and they just work really nicely. I've stopped calling pencils oil-based or wax-based because they've all got an element of those different sort of fats in them, oils, waxes. So it's not really true to say that something is oil-based or something is wax-based, because they've got a little bit of everything in. So I tend to call them soft and sticky, or hard and dry. So we've got our walnut brown, and we're just going to start to bring in a little bit of the colour into here. Now the other thing that I want to bring into here as well is a little bit of the texture. You can see when we look at the outline of the eye here, oops, just drawn a little bit extra in there. You can see when we look at that, we've got quite a lot of texture in there. I want to bring a little bit of that texture in right from the beginning. So instead of just colouring the eyelids in, I want to kind of have a look at the texture. So I'm not drawing the detail, but I want to bring a little bit of the texture in. So I'm just going to start down here. And there are some lighter areas in here as well, which, because I'm going to use really nice light pressure, I'm going to be able to bring something like a pink in over the top of it so that we can blend it together. So let's just start down here, and again I'm just going to use really soft pressure. So think about drawing on a ripe tomato or an orange segment, something like that. Think about not breaking the skin. That's the pressure that you want to be using. And again, I'm using these round pencil strokes. We come out to the edge of this eyelid here, and it's all a little bit sort of knobbly and bumpy. We don't have to draw exactly what's in the photograph, so we don't have to make it identical to the photograph, we can just bring a little bit of texture in that looks like the texture in the photograph. And then when we come up here, we can see all of these highlighty bits here. We need to isolate those highlights. We need to keep those free. Because we're using polychromos and we're using really nice light pressure, we will be able to lift a little bit of that pigment out if we want to with the kneadable eraser. So you saw me trying to rub this out, which was quite hard, which was, if I got another eraser, I'd be able to rub that out. But with a kneadable one, eraser, that was a little bit too hard pressure. With this, because I'm using really soft pressure, I should be able to go in and just pick a little bit out, which I'll show you in a second. The kneadable eraser I use is the, got the box here. It's this one. It's the Faber-Castell kneadable eraser. I have it on I have it on subscription. Subscription, yeah. So I get four of these every 6 weeks from Amazon. They go missing. The dog has a tendency to eat them, so I've got to be very careful where I keep them. But they get to a point where, so I've been doing, mine's covered in orange at the moment because I've been doing my portrait of the girl and she's very orange. So they do get to a point where they're sort of a little bit loaded with pigment. So, you know, but as soon as you knead them, so if I knead it like that, all the pigment tends to disappear. But there comes a time where you've used it for too long and then it just becomes a little bit marbled like that, and then you have to change it. So we're just going to go nice and gently. If we'd been doing one of my normal drawings, we'd have finished the eye by now and we'd be halfway through the body. So we're just going a little bit slower with this, you know, trying to sort of capture some of the details, but mostly by the time we've done this, we'll have captured all of that lovely lights and darks and everything. It's a really lovely photograph. It's a Sue Cross photograph. She's got an Instagram, amazing photographer, and she absolutely loves hares. She's an incredible lady. So again, when we come up here, it's all a little bit messy. So we're just going to sort of bring in a little bit in here. We are going to bring some of that hair and everything in. I probably won't draw the little sort of flea bites or whatever they are. We'll probably just sort of bring hair in over the top of that. But again, it's more sort of like sketchy. Just bring that sort of sketchiness in. And I think some people get a little bit, what's the word? Confused, surprised maybe, that, you know, most of my, well, all my work is realism. That's kind of what I strive for. And when I begin a drawing like this, it's usually very, very sketchy. So it's usually quite loose, sort of relatively quick, I guess, but sketchy. And I find with this sort of method being a little bit sketchy, it means that I can bring a little bit of life and a little bit of movement into my drawings. You know, it's not really static. It's not everything's not like absolutely perfect and all of the hair's going in exactly the right way. And it just, I think it just gives it a little bit more life for me. And it's kind of how I draw, basically. It's a thing that comes more naturally to me than being really, really specific. Okay, so I'm just going to come back down here. You can see there are some sort of like knobbly bits, which you can bring in if you want to do, or you can just sort of leave those out. But I'm still using very light pressure because I want to bring some of the pinky bits in over the top, and I also want to lift a little bit of those highlights out too. So just going to come along the bottom bit here. Again, you can see a little bit of that texture, the skin texture, almost sort of like on a curve around that eyelid there. Again, it's a nice idea to bring that in. Now, every artist who teaches colour pencil has their own method of doing something, and there's no right or wrong. It's just what works. And my way is this way. You know, there are all sorts of different ways of creating realism, but this is how I do it. You know, I'm not going to say this is the only way, because it isn't, but this is what works for me. We can see here that this is much darker down here, and we'll bring a little bit more depth into there, you know, as we kind of work through the piece. Again, we can see a lot of highlights in here. So I'm just going to sort of be a little bit rough again, sort of little squiggly lines, just sort of sketching a little bit of that, an idea of that texture in the eyelid and everything in there. And then we come round to here. And then I'm going to bring some pink in on the top. Now, you could have started with the pink first. Because we're using nice light pressure, we're going to be able to get it in over the top of the brown. If it works, it doesn't matter what you do. I tend to kind of put a few of the darks in first. I think that's because I predominantly work with pastel matte, and that kind of is a more natural thing for me to do. But obviously I need to be thinking ahead and thinking, well, hang on a second, you know, there are lights and everything in there as well. Okay, so we've got a layer of the walnut brown in, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my kneadable eraser, which is covered in orange. I think it's probably time for a new one. And I'm just going to bring it to, I tend to have the whole thing in my hand, and I'm just going to bring it to sort of like a nice little point like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift a little bit of those highlighty bits in there. I'm going to lift a little bit in there, not taking all of the pigment out, but just so we've got an idea of the structure and where there are little highlighty bits. Just going to bring a little bit into there as well. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring some of that pinky colour in. So I'm going to use the cinnamon. This one is 189. Okay, and with this I'm going to bring some of these sort of lighter colours into around the eyelid, particularly down in this area here. And I'm going to bring a little bit into here as well. We're also going to bring some Caput Mortuum violet in. So you can get that ready as well if you want. Mine's going a little bit small. Caput Mortuum violet is number 263. And that's like a very dark violety red. Super, super colour for drawing animals. But we're going to use the cinnamon first. So we're going to start down here. And we're just going to bring a little bit of this cinnamon in over the top of that walnut brown. And you can see it, walnut brown and cinnamon mix really, really well. You'll find that pinks work beautifully with browns, with oranges. They work really, really, really well. You know, and this particular colour, the Faber-Castell Polychromo Cinnamon, it's like a browny pink. It's like it's just a really great colour, particularly for animals. It's a really, really good colour for animals. So I'll use this in a lot of my bay horses, you know, gingery coloured dogs, that kind of thing. So again, it's really quite light pressure. If you're putting your colour down and you can't see anything, then just increase your pressure very slightly. The other thing that I tend to do is when I'm sort of bringing a colour in a specific area, I'll try and keep my pencil on the paper for as long as I can, because that means that my pressure remains constant. If I'm continually picking my pencil up off the paper, then I'm continually changing my pressure, and I don't want that to happen. I want there to be consistent pressure going on. So we've got this nice pinkiness coming in down here, and I'm also going to bring a little bit of it into this edge here. I'm not really going to worry about this top bit. I'm just going to bring a little bit of that pinkiness. You can see I'm using those round pencil strokes again, little pencil strokes. They're sort of going over the top of the walnut brown, and they're also filling in some of those little gaps that were left behind when we were gently bringing that walnut brown in. So we have a variant of colour in there already, even though we've just put 2 layers down. Now the thing with colour pencil is, particularly with realism, it's all about the layering. That's where you're going to get your depth and richness of colour. And it's where you're going to be able to get all of your texture you know, drawing your fur, all of that kind of thing. And what I see a lot of people who are just starting with coloured pencil do, and it's something that I used to do as well, is go straight in with details. So you get a bit of fur and you're like, right, I'm just going to draw all of the fur. And actually we've got to try and see beyond that detail and draw what's underneath it first, build up those layers, and then bring the details in over the top, and it ends up being much, much easier. Okay, I'm just going to bring a little bit more down here. Again, your drawings don't have to be an exact replica of the photograph. You can, you know, everybody will have their own style, and you will represent the photo in a unique way to you. You know, there are so many realism artists, and you can look at their work, and if you know them and you've seen them on a regular basis, you will be able to pick out the artist, even though you know, it's the same. They're all doing realism. Everybody has their own way of doing things. Right, so we're going to use the Caput Mortuum Violet now, which is the 263. And we're going to bring that in as well. And we're just going to start to darken up in here. Now, we put black in here to begin with. What I want to do is build up the colour around the hare's eye. And then I want to bring black in over the top of those colours to bring out detail and to really deepen the shadowy bits, the darkest bits. Because we've got colour underneath it, that black is going to be really, really nice and rich. And because we're using polychromos, again, the colours are slightly more translucent. So you can kind of see through the layers. So you can use the black just to darken other colours. What you've got to be careful of when you're using black over other colours is you've got to recognise that black is more blue based. You know, if you're using sort of like a pure black, depending on the manufacturer of the pencil, but the polychromos black is more blue based. So if you use this colour and you want to darken an orange or you want to darken a yellow, you have to remember that blue and yellow make green. So that's something you've got to be really, really careful of when you're mixing your colours with your polychrome, well, with any coloured pencil. You've got to remember what the base of the colour is and what it's going to do and how it's going to affect the colour you're putting over the top of. Usually I would use complementary colours, and that's to do with your colour wheel. So I would use, the complementary colour to yellow is purple. So if you've got, say you're drawing a yellow flower and you want to get some really beautiful deep shadows in that yellow flower, if you use purple, or sort of like a magenta-y colour, oh, I've got one here somewhere. It's a really, really good, oh no I haven't, it's gone. That is going to look absolutely beautiful. The purple is very different to the blue. If you put blue in over the top of the yellow, obviously you're going to get green. But the purple has got those reds and everything in it, and it's a fantastic colour for adding shadows and everything into your yellow things. So it is a really good idea to understand a little bit about colour theory. A lot of it is colour mixing like we did at school. You know, red and orange, red and yellow make orange, red and blue make purple, that kind of thing. But it's very important to remember that. Okay, so Caput Mortuum Violet. Again, we're just going to come in and we're just going to sort of darken some of these areas. We've got this pinky bit in here, and we can still see some of this pinky bit. Now, because we've got a couple of layers in, we can just be a little bit more specific about where our pencil is going. It's going to react quite differently when your pencil hits the paper, because we've got a couple of layers down. The colour is going on top of other colour. And it's going to feel quite different when we put the first layer in. So we can actually bring in, you see here, just a little bit of the texture and the sort of like the little sprouty hairs that are coming off. That's quite nice to do at this stage. Even if we don't keep these hairs in the end, it's quite nice to do because it looks great. You know, when you're looking down at your picture, we all know, well, you might not all know, but with coloured pencils, because it's such a slow medium, we tend to go through stages that we affectionately call the ugly stages. And those ugly stages can, once you get to know what they are, they're absolutely fine. But when you first start and you start drawing and your drawing goes through an ugly stage and you think, oh my goodness, what is happening? I want this to look like the photograph. It's looking nothing like the photograph. And that's where confidence is lost and where drawings get put in the bin. We just have to understand the process that they go through an ugly stage. My thoughts are, if we can keep those ugly stages to a minimum, then that's really good, because as we work through the drawing, we're like, oh, this is looking all right, actually. And those ugly stages are sort of like they happen, but they don't last very long. And that's what we want to happen. And that's why, that I do what I do, and I use the process that I use, because it really does help keep those ugly stages at bay. And that's what we want. It's even if you know the process, it's still really frustrating, and it can be a little bit sort of heartbreaking, when you get to a point you think, oh, this is just looking absolutely terrible. Even though it's going to come right, it can still be it can still sort of affect you a little bit. So I'm just kind of coming up over here. I've left this light again. We're gonna come in and do something with that a little bit later. And I'm going to leave this bit here. I'm just going to work a little bit more on the outside of the eye, and then we're going to work on the middle bit, which is the exciting bit. And it's funny, when I first started drawing, which is, I can't believe it, it's nearly 7 years ago now. I wanted to draw all of the interesting bits. The interesting bits to me were eyes and, loads of little tiny details and everything. And I've taught myself to love every single stage of a drawing. I've taught myself just to love the process of drawing, whatever it is. I used to get a bit bored of, I'd do an animal's face. I'd get to the neck and I'd be like, oh, just get a bit of fur in there. Just scribble it in, because I was like, oh, I'd either got another picture to start, or, I forgot that an eye can take an hour. A little eye can take an hour to do. That's, like an inch. So why wouldn't a piece of complicated fur take an hour to do? Why do I think a piece of fur is going to be done in 5 minutes? It's not. And I've really, really, really come to understand the process of coloured pencils. And it's the only medium I use, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm always striving to develop my skills. And what's good about that is that I then pass those things that I've learned on to all of my students. So we're all learning, which is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. When you're in an environment where everybody's learning and everybody's excited about what they're doing, it's the most fantastic thing, because, yes, some people learn a little bit or progress a little bit slower, but there's always that support, and there's that inspiration and greatness from others that brushes off onto, the people just starting out. It's a brilliant, brilliant place to be. So whatever you do in life, just surround yourself with people who are better than you are, and who are striving for even better, because you're going to, it's like osmosis, isn't it? You're just going to kind of feed off their brilliance and, their inspiration. And it really is a super place to be. So I'm just coming down here. That's the other thing as well. If you've not experienced my teaching before, it's not just about, put this colour here and put that colour there and do this and do that. I weave all of my coaching experience into my tutorials as well. So when we get to a part where, maybe we're doing the neck of a horse or something, and it's the same techniques and the same colours over and over again, I'll bring in some sort of like coaching-y things to help people understand how to increase their confidence and help with their mindset and all of that kind of thing. And because I'm, again, like with my drawing, I'm always developing my mindset. I'm always doing some kind of a course. I just love self-development. I think I've always loved it. And then I pass that on to my students. Yeah, it's good. So I'm just coming down here again. I just want to keep this little bit lighter along the bottom here. Again, I'm going to bring a little bit of pink in a bit later, and possibly a little bit of blue, but we'll see. And then I'm just going to go a little bit darker here. So when I'm coming along the bottom bit here, you can see there's like a little blobby bit there, but you can see down here it goes darker. So this is quite a short pencil, but my fingers kind of come closer to the end of the pencil so that I've got really, really good control over where I'm putting the marks. And when I want to go a little bit darker, I'm going to bring a bit of black in, but when I want to go a little bit darker, I just go really tiny pencil strokes, and they're wiggly. So it's not just like that, they're little wiggly pencil strokes, so I get a little bit of texture in there at the same time. And it just darkens it slightly. Then when I bring my black in over the top, it'll darken it, but it will also recognise that little bit of texture that I put in the little wriggly lines that I put in. Like I say, we don't have to copy the photograph exactly, and I never do. I just look at the photograph, and then I represent what I'm looking at. I don't have the patience to copy a photograph exactly. Just bring it a little bit darker in there. Again, down here we've got all of these little fur lines that are going to come in as well, with little bits of fur. We'll do a little bit of fur before we finish, but I'll have to keep an eye on the time as well, because this is my time for drawing. So I start drawing every day at 7 o'clock in the evening, and I draw till around midnight. And it's, I guess you get into a routine, and during the day, that's when I kind of create videos, and I have Zoom calls, and I've done a podcast interview today, and answer emails and that kind of thing during the day. But then 7 o'clock comes, and that's it. That's my time for drawing, and I absolutely love it. The light's consistent, particularly at this time of year. The light is consistent because I just use my studio lights, and it's like how I used to just sort of come home from work when I worked full time, and you'd flop in front of the telly, and that would be sort of like your sort of pick me up, your how you sort of relax at the end of the day. Drawing is how I relax, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. It's 7 years on Sunday that I picked up coloured pencils. My daughter bought me some W.H. Smith pencils and a colouring book. And that's when I discovered I wanted to do colouring for mindfulness, and that's when I discovered coloured pencils, and I was absolutely hooked. I didn't do my own drawings for probably about 3 or 4 months, but I just did colouring, and oh my goodness, I loved it, absolutely loved it. And it's just the most fantastic medium, and then sort of like 3 or 4 months in, then I started drawing my own portraits, and that's when people started asking me to do commissions and everything, and it's kind of gone quite well since then. Okay, so we've got this nice eyelid area here now. It is quite sort of reddy browny, and we are going to bring some black and everything into there. But what I want to do now, because we could carry on like this for 3 hours, just draw the eyelid and then you'll all be completely bored. What we need to do is we need to think about the middle bit. So we're going to start drawing the iris area, the actual eyeball area. And I just want to talk about a few things within it so that we can, you can really understand why I'm doing something, and how to get your eyes looking more realistic. So, and alive. We want life in our eyes. So when you look at the photograph, and you look at the lights and the shades, we've got this lovely catch light across here. I'll just bring in fact, I won't bring my black out because it'll end up going all over, won't it? So we've got this lovely catch light here. Quite a big catch light it's beautiful because we've actually got the fields at the bottom here. I don't think I've chosen a green. I think we'll just go with sort of blacks and blues and a little bit of brown, which blue, and we can use blue and yellow to get the green in there. But there's almost like a picture within a picture. We've got the landscape in here, which is lovely. Now, we don't have to draw all of that exactly as per the photograph. We can just bring a little bit of sort of sketchiness in and it will look fine. What happens is people tend to concentrate mostly on the catch light, this bit here. So if you get a dog's eye and you've got like a lovely bright catch light, that's what people tend to think is, you know, how your eye is going to look most realistic. You ask a question of somebody, how can I get my eye looking more realistic? And people will say, oh, get your catch light in there, you know, get a really nice bright catch light in there. If we look at this catch light in the photograph, actually, there isn't really a bright white in here at all. It's obviously lighter than some of the rest of the eye. But what we do have is this area down here, which is absolutely glorious. This is what I bring into all of my eyes if I can. It's another catch light, but it's slightly lower down and it's within the colour, you know, so we actually get to see a slightly brighter area of colour. With this hair, we've got this beautiful sort of orangey colour. And then where the light hits the orangey colour, we've got like a beautiful yellow in there. If you can get this in there, honestly, it just brings eyes to life. The other thing that we've got to be really, really mindful of are the shadows. The really dark areas around the eye. This area around here is quite dark, and down here as well. So those are what the shadows really are, what are going to make your eye look really realistic. The darker your shadows, the brighter your highlights are going to look. You know, because if you put dark next to something really light, the contrast is higher and our eye gets drawn into high contrast. So watch with your catch lights that you don't go too bright, and remember to concentrate on your shadows. So we're going to start off with a little bit on the pupil, and we're going to start with the dark indigo, the 157 Polychromos dark indigo. It's quite a dull dark blue, and I use this every single time I draw an eye, without exception really. I use the dark indigo first. What we've got to be really careful of in this particular pupil is we've actually got lots of little clouds scudding across it. So we can't just colour it all in blue. And down here as well, we can't really colour all of that in either. So we've got to sort of be quite careful about how we're going to do this. So we're going to start up at the top bit here, this top right hand bit, which is quite dark, and we have got that sort of fairly curved line, and it is sort of like quite dark up there. What I want you to be careful of not doing is just drawing a big ring around your pupil. So we're going to start at the top here and just be really quite careful, and again a little bit sketchy. Can you see how I'm not just going with my line? I'm bringing it in, I'm just going sketch, sketch, sketch. Just bring that line in around there. I'm going to bring it into this area. I am actually going to bring it all the way down. My head now, as I'm looking at this photograph, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, there's like all sorts in this eye. And I'm thinking, right, okay, what colours am I going to use in this? I'm sort of like quite a few steps ahead. And I'm looking at that bottom bit of the pupil, and my thinking is I'm just going to bring a little bit of yellow in over the top of the dark blue. And that's going to bring a hint of green in, because we haven't chosen a green for this. And then again, I'm just going to bring the top here, just be really very, very, very gentle, bringing this up and around the top of that pupil, because we don't want to end up with lines going through our cloudy bits. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're just going to bring a little bit of, in fact, I'm going to colour this bottom bit in here with the dark indigo. We're going to go nice and gently, so it's going to look like a mid blue, and it's going to look quite grainy regardless of what paper you're going to be using. And we're just going to come in from the corner here. Again, we're going to use round pencil strokes, nice and gentle. If your pencil's got a little bit dull, then you'll need to sharpen it. So really, really, really gently just bringing that dark blue in. So it's going to look quite pale to begin with. And as we kind of bring the layers in on the top, it's going to darken up. Nice and gently. This is a much nicer speed, isn't it, than the drawing like a train. We'll do that on New Year's Day. We'll draw like the clappers on New Year's Day. Okay, so we're going to do. You can see there's a little bit of a line across there where the horizon is, where that's like a line of trees or something. So if you want to do it straight across, you can, or if you want to bring a little bit of a wriggly line in, you can. I know that there are going to be some who are drawing this who are class themselves as perfectionists and want to get it exactly like the photograph. You know, go for it. Honestly, go for it. Just do what makes you feel comfortable. I am not a perfectionist in any form. And it's actually something that I try to help people to move away from. Because I think perfectionism, it just sort of it kind of stops people enjoying their work an awful lot of the time. I'm not saying, you know, some people can't help it, and that's absolutely fine. It's something that they have to do and actually probably enjoy doing. You know, but if you are a perfectionist and it's dragging you down, yeah, that's when you need to sort of try not to be too perfect. Okay, so we've got that bottom bit of the eye there. So now what I want to do is I want to sort of start to bring in a little bit of this area in here. Or do I? No, I think I'm going to bring a little bit of the yellow in. Before I start, I'm just going to take a little bit of this out. This is, my outline is done in graphite. So I just want to kind of dab that out a little bit. I didn't really need that anyway. We can freehand all of that in there. Just dab a little bit of that out. And that out there as well. So now what we've got to think about is, okay, we've got this sort of yellowy eye. Now the yellowy colours that I've chosen, if you were doing this on your own, then you'd have, you know, if you've got all of the pencils, then you've got all of the pencils to choose from. Because I've just picked a few out, we don't have all of the pencils. So the orangey ones that I've got, I'm going to kind of be having a look at. So I've got all of these here, actually the terracotta as well. So we've got all of these pencils that we can start to kind of bring a little bit in. The ones that I probably are going to use an awful lot of are the brown ochre, revolting looking colour but brilliant. There's the raw umber here, again pretty revolting colour but again brilliant. We've got this gorgeous dark cadmium yellow. We've got the cadmium orange, which is the most fantastic colour for animal eyes, particularly for this area down here. There are parts of this that are going to be orangey. We've got the dark cadmium orange, where there are a couple of areas that are going to work really nicely down there. And then we've got terracotta, which is sort of like a stronger orangey colour. We've got burnt ochre, which is like a bit more of a dull orangey colour. And then we've got our burnt sienna here. So we're going to start off with the brown ochre. It might look a little bit strange to begin with, but bear with. And we're going to start to come out around the edge of the pupil area here. Again, I'm just going to tweak this little bit here. I apologise if you can hear the dogs barking. I think my daughter's gone upstairs. I've told her to look after them and I don't think she is. So we've got the brown ochre, which is the 182. Okay, really useful pencil. Really useful pencil for using in all fur types when you've got warm colours in there. So if you're drawing like a gingery coloured dog, bay horse, that kind of thing, if you've got those reddy colours, those beautiful reddy colours, something like the burnt sienna, very warm reddy colours, the more greeny brown from the brown ochre is a fantastic colour just to balance everything out. Otherwise everything tends to look too pinky, too reddy. Right, so we're going to start along here. We've got to be careful that we're kind of picking up that that horizon there, and we're just going to go very, very gently out to the edge. We're going to come in a sort of like a sweeping line around the eye, because that we can see that's the texture of the eye. We're not going to worry too much about the tiny details. So we're just going to come across. You can see my pencil's going backwards and forwards. So I'm kind of getting a couple of layers in there right from the off. And I'm using very light pressure. So it's going to look quite light to begin with. And then we're going to make it a little bit darker by increasing pressure, adding layers, that kind of thing. We've also got a nice highlight around the eye here as well, which I think I'm going to take out with the putty eraser. I think it's going to be easier to take it out. It's a little bit shorter here. So I'm ignoring all of the details and all of those darker lines that are coming through the eye there. I'm just not even taking any notice of them. I'm taking notice of the curve of the eye. Just bringing that through there. And then I've got to be really careful when I get to this bit here. Actually, I'm going to take a little bit of that out, because then it starts to get sort of quite yellowy. We've got the brown ochre I'm going to bring in from the bottom then. I'm going to bring it in from the bottom again in this sort of round the eye in the line. That doesn't make sense, does it? Lines around the eye. And we're coming in from the bottom, but we're just going to be really, really careful not to kind of encroach into this area where it's going to be much brighter. Again, I'm not really taking notice of detail or anything like that. So I've got a little bit of the line art here that I can follow. Oops, I'm just going to put that on there. And this is really, really dark down here at the bottom. Again, we're going to bring more layers in to darken that up. And then we're going to come up around this area. This is where it starts to look a little bit strange. And when you're drawing it, you're thinking, oh God, this is just looking really weird. I want it to look like an eye. It's not looking like an eye. My colours are all off, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, you've just got to get your inner voice. You've got to make it quiet. You know, understand that there's a process. If you want to make something look really realistic with coloured pencils, you're not going to get a realistic drawing in just one layer. It's going to take a few layers. And you've just got to keep telling yourself that. Keep layering. I used to put post-it notes on my drawing board. Keep going. Keep layering. You know, it's going to look ugly, don't worry. You know, and if you remind yourself of those things, then you get used to it, and it's all just part of the process, and it's all fine. Very often I'll be drawing something, you know, and I'll be like I am doing now, and I'll be saying, oh, you know, it's fine, and we go through this, and it's not, you know, we just follow the process. My head will still be, my internal voice will still be there, you know, whispering away, Bonny, it looks rubbish. And I just have to block it out. We can't have our internal voice telling us all of these things. It's because it talks rubbish. It has no idea what it's saying, our internal voice. It doesn't know. It's there trying to stop us making changes. And it's, you know, I think it's part of our ego, I think, our internal voice. And it's there to sort of keep us safe. And if we just, you know, do the same thing day in, day out, then we'll be safe, won't we? You know, but it tends to have like a bit of a mean, critical edge to it. I have changed my inner voice. My inner voice has changed, and it's a lot more positive, but it does creep in sometimes. So I'm just going to come around this edge here. This is going to end up being really quite dark, and I'm going to bring some of this brown ochre around here. So by doing this and bringing that little bit of the bottom bit in here and not concentrating on that top bit there, what we're going to do is we're going to bring a lot of this nice lightness through, and then it will be easier to do this bit. So I'm going a little bit harder. I'm pressing a little bit harder around here. This colour is never going to be really, really dark. We're going to have to put a darker colour on the top of it to get that depth. But with you, hopefully you can see in the photograph, you can see that there's an essence of brown ochre in there. The more you do, the more you see. When I first started drawing, I didn't see half of the things. Well, I probably saw 100th of what I see now. The more you do, the more you tend to see. You know, and you kind of get used to colours. People get a little bit hung up on colour, and like, oh, I don't know what colours to use. You know, and actually, if you just sort of just went for it and didn't really worry about colour or anything like that, and just chose something that you think, well, do you know what, this colour looks kind of like that, it'll be fine. That's all I did. When I was drawing, I'd be like, I'm drawing this bay horse. Well, that colour kind of matches that, so I think I'll go with that. And I was using polychromos, and the polychromos barrel tends to match the pigment of the pencil really well. You do get some more budget brands where the barrel doesn't actually match the pigment of the pencil particularly well. You know, and as long as you realise that and you understand that, it's not so bad. But I don't think it's a problem at all. I'm just going to sharpen this, it's gone a little bit dull. I don't think it's a problem at all choosing a pencil that matches the colour of your subject. The more you do, the more you'll learn, the more you'll find that, oh, well, I mixed this colour with that colour and that worked really, really well actually, so I'll remember that for next time. The reason I use the dark indigo on my pupil area here is because that's what I did right from the beginning, and it's worked, so I keep using it. You know, if something works, then brilliant. So I'm just going to come up here a little bit more. You can see with the sharper pencil, you get a richer pigment coming around there. And then I'm just going to come a little bit darker down here. Can you see where it's all quite dark down here? Again, sort of quite darkish. All right, so I've got a question from Vicky here. What paper am I using? I'm using the Derwent Lightfast paper. I think I was going to mention that at the beginning, and then I think I got... I think I stopped telling you. It's the Derwent Lightfast paper that I'm using. I've got a few pads of it, and for hot press paper, I quite like this because it's relatively smooth and it takes a lot of layers. What paper do I like and what paper do I hate? So I love pastel matte. Pastel matte is my surface. I absolutely adore pastel matte. If you haven't used it before, it is a little bit like Marmite in that it doesn't feel like a normal surface. It's made from cellulose fibres. And they call it an abrasive paper, so it's got quite a lot of tooth to it. The problem with pastel matte is, which I have to say you do get used to, it's the consistency of the quality of the paper because of how it's made, and some people get really quite frustrated. I've just bought quite a few pieces of the white pastel matte sheet, and they're all beautifully, they're absolutely gorgeous. They're just, honestly, I got them out of the box and I was thinking, oh, what are they going to be? Because sometimes you can get them and it's like drawing on concrete. It's like you know, like brick. It's so bumpy. And oh my goodness. In fact, I messaged Vicky and I was like, oh my God, I've got the most fantastic pastel matte. It is so velvety and smooth, and I've just got really giddy about it. I did a bit of a happy dance in the studio. I love pastel matte. I love it because I used to say I love it because I can get a load of layers down on it, but actually I don't. I do put a lot of layers in if I need to, but I tend to not put a massive amount of layers, probably not put more layers than I would on hot press paper. But what I love about it is the way that it takes the pencil, so I don't have to use pressure. You know, I don't have to sort of increase my pressure too much. I suffer from achy joints and all of that kind of thing, I can't well, I can burnish, of course I can burnish it and it's fine, but I end up with really achy joints, and that's not, it's not a nice thing to do. It's not a nice thing if you do have joint problems. You know, you want to be able to draw every day, and you don't want to be having a hurty shoulder or wrists or whatever. And that's what I love about pastel mat, the fact that I can get beautiful richness and depth without having to use a massive amount of pressure. It does have its unusual quality in that it is grainy, so your initial layers are sort of a bit frustrating when you first start using it. It's like, what on earth is this? This is horrible, but you get used to it, you know, and you get used to the techniques that you need to use on it. I love pastel mat because it's enabled me to do backgrounds with pencils. I don't use pastel ever. I'm allergic to pastel. I can't bear the feel of pastel. I just it's like, you know, nails on a chalkboard. I just can't. So when you think about colour pencils and their qualities and the speed of them, and you think about doing a background, it's always like, oh, flipping heck. You know, how am I going to do a background with coloured pencils? It's like, oh, this isn't going to work. And actually, pastel mat has enabled me to do backgrounds, and now I really love a background. You know, I tend to use the hard, dry pencils like Pablos and like Polychromos, because you put them down nice and gently, and then you can move the pigment around. The surface of the pastel mat has such a fantastic quality that the pigment just sits on the top, and you can just move it around like a little bit like dust, which is a bit strange because obviously I don't like pastel. But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful surface. I don't really hate any paper. I don't really enjoy working on Fabriano Artistico or Bristol Vellum or the really super smooth papers like the Bristol Plate and stuff like that. Again, because I have to use more pressure, and because my techniques basically now are kind of honed towards... Right, before I carry on, I'm just going to talk about this a little bit here. We're just going to go in a little bit heavier here. We're going to bring a little bit more colour in. Can you see how we've got this really nice and dark around here? But I want to leave that nice little highlighty bit around the eye there. So we're going to sort of isolate that bit. And I was going to carry on with what I was saying, but I can't remember what I was saying. Yeah, the techniques I use with pastel mats work really, really well for my style of drawing. And, you know, I like sort of like layering. I like the, you know, sort of like the piece coming together sort of nice and slowly and gently and emerging and everything. And yeah, so I don't really hate any paper, but I also really enjoy working on drafting film. Drafting film is a super, super surface for coloured pencil artists. It's if you haven't used it before, it's actually a plastic film, which sounds a bit odd, and it's sort of semi-opaque, so you can see through it. And it's also, the film that I use is double-sided, and it's got a matte coating on it, so you can use both sides. So you can do your drawing front and back, which allows you to get extra depth and everything in there as well. And what I really like about drafting film is the fact that it doesn't have any tooth. So it doesn't, you know, like when we're drawing now, when we draw a line, you can kind of see the tooth of the paper. It looks a little bit grainy. Drafting film doesn't have tooth. So you put your pencil on the surface and it is smooth. It is super sharp. And for somebody who really loves details and loves getting into details really, really quickly, drafting film is oh my goodness, it is a super, super, super surface. You're limited a little bit with the layers that you can use, but you've got the back, and because you don't have the tooth, it means that you can go in with the details quite quickly. And that is really, really good, because you don't then have to concentrate on the base layers or anything like that. You know, you can just sort of go straight ahead and get your details and everything in. So that's a really super paper. Okay, so why didn't I choose pastel matte for this eye? The reason I didn't choose pastel matte for this eye is because pastel matte is really expensive, and I wanted it to be, I wanted this to be inclusive for everybody. So having a smooth paper, hot press paper, is much better for a draw like this. I mean, I think I had 2,700 people sign up for this drawing. You know, and if you had to buy a sheet of pastel matte just to do an eye, it's a bit mean of me to do that. And actually, it's fine doing it on the hot press paper. I do a lot of my tutorials on pastel matte, but I think for the live draws, I like to keep it a little bit more inclusive, you know, because not everybody has got the resources to be able to buy, you know, the more expensive papers. It is expensive. I think it's about £8 a sheet, depending on where you get it from. But that's the reason why I didn't. And then when drawing, do you complete one stage, say the eye, or work the whole drawing? Okay, so when I do a whole drawing, I work in sections. So I'll complete the eye, and then what I tend to do is then because I'm right-handed, I go to the top left and I work down and kind of diagonally. I kind of work down and across. So if I've got a dog, say, I'll do the ear, I'll do the top of the head, I'll do the other ear, and then I'll kind of work down in sections. That's just how my brain works. It's not because it's the correct method to use, it's just how my brain works. This I see as sort of like a section. So we kind of dot around a little bit because it's quite a small area. I like to see things coming to life, so that's why I work in sections. So, and I also like to see that my ideas for the drawing are going to work. So if I've got like a big, large expanse of fur, I like to bring a bit of fur up so it's finished, and then I'm like, right, I know what I'm doing now for the rest of it. Some artists work over the entire piece and they just put a layer in over the entire piece, do a little bit here, do a little bit there. I have worked like that, and I've done a couple of tutorials like that. I don't enjoy that process. It's not what really sings to me. What sings to me is seeing the subject emerge bit by bit by bit, and I absolutely love it. So that's what I do. Right, let's bring a little bit of colour into here. We're gonna use that dark cadmium yellow, and we're also going to bring a little bit of the ivory in as well. Oh, I might have to sneeze in a minute. I do apologise if I do. Dark cadmium yellow, which is the 108. And the ivory, which is the 103. You'll also notice as well, if you don't know polychromos, you'll also notice that polychromos have got this little star system to their pencils. 3 stars means that it's really good light fast. So the majority of polychromos pencils have got 3 stars. And light fastness means that your colours are going to stay true for a number of years. And that's what we want, really. So we've got the dark cadmium yellow here. And we're just going to start to bring a little bit in. It might look a bit bright and a bit weird to begin with, but we're going to trust the process. We've also got a little bit of orange going on in there as well, but I'm just going to bring this bit of yellow in. I'm also going to bring a touch of this yellow in there too. The other thing about coloured pencils is that each pigment kind of feels different. I'm a very feely person, so this is what I love about my coloured pencils, because I can feel the surface underneath, and it's why I don't like, I tried drawing over pan pastels, then found I was allergic, but I couldn't draw over pan pastels because the feeling was just like, oh, I couldn't bear it. But what you'll find with different colours, even in the same brand, they will feel different when you lay them down on the paper, on the surface. So I find that these brighter, more vibrant colours, like the yellows, like the oranges, like the reds, they tend to go down smoother, a little bit like lipstick, if you like. And then some of the colours, some of the darker colours, some of the less vibrant colours, I think it must depend on the what goes, the ingredients and everything. They can end up being a little bit more grainy. And I'm drawing something at the moment that's very orange, and I'm loving it because the orange goes down so smoothly. It's beautiful. Okay, so I'm just going to bring a little bit of this yellow up here as well. Again, if I was doing this outside of a draw along, I'd probably pick some more colours to go into here. You know, I've picked colours for this, and this is the first time that I've drawn this hare's eye. So, you know, sometimes you think, I should have used this colour and I should have used that colour, but actually it's going to work out fine. And then I'm going to just, before I do anything else, I'm just going to get a little bit of that cinnamon again, that pinky colour, that 189. And I'm going to bring a little bit of that through into here, just a tiny bit. Just going to put my thing on. Okay. And then I'm going to bring a little bit of this cinnamon in on the top here. Okay. Need to crack on a bit in a minute, otherwise we are going to be drawing till midnight. To be honest, it doesn't. I could just keep going. you might all sort of you know, slink off and then catch up with it later. But you know, once I finish this, I won't be drawing my other piece. I think my tea's in the oven. I've just started watching Yellowstone. I've heard quite a lot about it, so I think I'll probably watch a little bit of that. Okay, so I'm just putting a little bit of that pink in there. Now you might be thinking, well, why is she choosing pink? That's what I can see in the photograph. I can just see sort of like a little bit of a hint of pink in there, so I'm just putting that in there. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to just bring, this looks all a bit mushy and a bit more. We want to bring a little bit darker colour into here so that we really start to get the feeling of the light and the dark. So I've got my walnut brown. And I'm also going to use a little bit of the burnt sienna and the Caput Mortem violet. And we're just going to bring some of those darker elements in. I'm also going to use the dark cadmium orange. And now I'm just going to sharpen these because I've got a couple that are a little bit blunt. So I now use an electric pencil sharpener, which I absolutely love. It's a Swordfish multi-point, and I literally just stick my pencil in and it sharpens it. It's brilliant. So I'm going to start with the Caput Mortem violet, which is the 263. And we're just going to start to darken a little bit around the edges. So here, we want this an awful lot darker. So I'm going to come in over the top of the brown ochre. This pencil's a little bit small now. I should change it really. I don't like working with really tiny pencils. They don't fit in my hand properly. The balance just goes off a little bit. Like I say, I'm quite a feely person, and it just, you know, when something doesn't feel quite right, it's. So I'm just going to come into here again. I'm just going to try not to rush too much, and just sort of fill that tooth in and get that nice and dark. And you see how we've got this coming really quite nice and dark here. So this area here is starting to really stand out and look quite bright. And that is what's going to make your eye look quite realistic, is getting that lovely contrast between your darks and your lights. Really, really, really important. And actually something that, you know, we need to think about in everything. If you're doing a portrait and you've got sort of, say, the head and well, you've got a whole body portrait, or you've got, you know, a dog lying on its paws, or a cat lying on its paws or something, and all of the focus really wants to be on the face. That's where you want the focus to be. If you've got areas of the animal that you end up putting lots of detail in and some quite high contrast, you run the risk of the viewer, their focus coming away from where you want it to focus, which is the face, pulled down to where that high contrast is. You know, if you've got like a very light colour next to a very dark colour. And what I tend to try and sort of teach is, in that sort of instance, is a really good idea to drop the contrast so that everything becomes a little bit sort of darker or lighter, but there's no contrast in there. And if we drop the detail in those kind of areas as well, it becomes a little bit sort of, it's there, but you're not really focused on it, so you don't really care. And that way it's a really, really good way of just keeping the focus on the main subject. Again, so I'm just going to come down here. This Caput Mortem Violet is working quite nicely on the brown ochre. I'm going to go a little bit darker down here. We will bring some black in at some point, but now what I want to do is I want to start bringing some of these little lines in into the eye. So I'm just going to sort of I'm going to bring them in, and then I'm just going to I think bring the ivory in and just burnish a little bit. Not too hard, it's not really burnished then, is it? But just put a little bit of a stronger pressured layer in, so that we're squashing all of that that pencil into the paper, into the tooth of the paper. And then it's going to look smoother. We want it to look nice and smooth. And I'm just bringing these in first. We may then have to go back in again and put these in again. But they're just sort of like a bit of a holder, really. It's like a bit like a sunflower. And when we've got these bits down here working a little bit better, like I say, I'm not copying the eye exactly. You know, there might be fewer of these little sort of starbursty things around here. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to bring that ivory in, which is the 103, and I'm just going to bring in a little bit of that over the top of this. I'm going to use stronger pressure so that it just squashes everything in a little bit, blends everything a little bit. It will go a little bit paler, and then what we can do is we can just bring that colour back in over the top. I think a lot of the time with coloured pencil, it's very much one step forward, 3 steps back, unfortunately. You know, because you kind of put stuff in and then you layer over the top of it and then it disappears. And I think that's one of the biggest learning curves when you're learning coloured pencil. It's like, well, hang on a second, why are you doing that? You've spent all of that time putting all of that in and then you've just coloured over the top of it. What's the point? And again, it's to do with adding richness. It's to do with adding, you know, all of that lovely depth in your pieces. I'm just going to bring a little bit of that in over the top of that pinky area there as well, where it's just that little bit lighter, just so we can get it a bit smoother. And there's a bit of water. Okay, so I'm going to come back in again with the brown ochre, and we're just going to sort of come back in again on here. Now, hopefully what should happen is your pencil strokes will be a little bit smoother now that we've gone in with, we've got a few layers in there and we've just gone in a little bit harder with that ivory colour. So we just darken that up a little bit more. And then I do want to bring some of the orange in as well, actually. I'm going to bring a little bit of the terracotta in, which is the 186. And the reason I want to bring this in is because I just want a little bit extra sort of nice colour in here. And this, as opposed to the dark cadmium orange, the dark cadmium orange is quite fluorescent-y. So we can bring a little bit of that down into here. But the terracotta, I think, is going to be quite a nice colour just to bring in. Very gently. So I'd use something that's called glazing, which is using very light pressure just to come in over the top of other colours. And it tends to enhance what's the layers underneath. So we just glaze very gently the colour in over the top. It's a really great technique for things like black dogs. You know, you can kind of get all of your values and everything in, get your blacks and everything in there and get it lovely and dark. And then you can use colour like bright pink and yellows to glaze over the top of the black, and it works really, really nicely. I'm just going to bring a little bit of that through into there as well. And I'm going to bring a little bit of that terracotta up into the top here. So we're getting some nice colour in there, particularly in these sort of darker areas. Okay, Okay, and then I'm going to come down here as well and just bring a little bit of that terracotta through into here. Okay, so is there a limit to layers? Now, what I find with layering is, hopefully, you won't need to put a massive amount of layers in, because obviously the more layers you put in, the longer it's going to take, and the you know, some papers don't take, some surfaces don't take a huge amount of layers. I tend to find that I'll use, with something like this, when we're building it up, there are quite a few layers involved. I probably end up bringing about, I don't know, 10, 15 layers in. I don't really tend to count them, to be honest. What happens is, and this is the reason why I like a surface that allows for quite a lot of layers, there are inevitably parts of your drawing that are a little bit trickier than other bits. So some bits you could get away with putting 2 layers in, for example. Like this area here, you know, we've got 1 layer of black in there, great. Some areas, they just don't go right, or there's an awful lot of value detail in there, so your values are changing quite a lot, and I find those areas you tend to have to put much more effort in and an awful lot more layers in. And that's why I like a surface that does take layers, because it means if I need the layers, I've got them. There's nothing worse than doing a drawing and then going, oh, I just need to, can't quite get this bit right here, and I just need to kind of get more colour in or get more value in, and you kind of get to a point where you're like, I can't get any more layers in. It's just, I just can't. It's just not going to take any more layers. It then gets a little bit frustrating because, you know, you get to a point where everything starts to maybe go a little bit muddy, or you can't quite get the contrast or the colour right. If you want to get the colour right, you know, and that's why I like a surface that will take a few layers. There isn't an optimum amount of layers. There isn't a maximum and there isn't a minimum. So if I'm drawing a white animal on white paper, there will be areas of that where I've got 1 layer in, just 1 layer. There'll also be areas where I've got maybe 15 layers. And there will also be areas where I've struggled a little bit, maybe gone wrong a little bit, and then I've ended up with like 25, 30 layers. It's totally dependent on the subject, and obviously the colours and the values and everything that you're trying to sort of bring in there. But there isn't really an optimum amount. I think what's good to understand is that layering is one of the main techniques for coloured pencil when it comes to realism. You know, that is what is going to give you your realistic looking subject, whatever it is that you're doing. It's all to do with layering, how you mix your colour and all of that kind of stuff. Right, I'm going to bring a little bit of the burnt sienna in. So this is the burnt sienna, this is the 283. And we're just going to start to darken again these little bits in here. So it's quite sharp. And I just want to bring... I was going to bring a little bit of this around here, but I think it's more bluey, actually, bluey grey. So I was kind of around there, and then we need to really darken this bottom bit here. Just bring these in here so these are a little bit darker. You know, with a study like this, you could spend hours and hours and hours on something like this. You really could. And actually, eyes are the most wonderful things to draw, especially if you've got reflection and all of that kind of stuff in. The other thing I like about pastel mat is it's very forgiving. So, you know, I kind of joke that I don't make mistakes when I'm drawing. I don't make mistakes. I make a ton of mistakes. But with the pastel mat, it just disguises it, because I just layer over the top of it and I incorporate all of those mistakes into my drawing. And actually, they don't end up being mistakes, because they end up enhancing whatever it is that I've been drawing, and it's all part of it. You can really do that very, very, very nicely with pastel mat. It's harder to do it with the smoother surfaces because, you know, obviously you're sort of limited, and the surface works a little bit differently. We're just going to darken this area here with the burnt sienna. So I want to go quite a bit darker at the top here. Now you might have a paper that's sort of starting to go, hang on a second, I don't want to put any more layers in. If that's the case, just do what you can. You know, when you're putting the colour down, and you know, it's something to, don't get frustrated by it. It's something to remember. It's something to go, actually, I want to get more layers in here. This paper maybe isn't the right paper for me to be using. You know, I would say if you're using a hot press paper, a good quality hot press paper, you should be fine. You should be getting, you know, you should have the ability to get quite a lot of layers in there. If you're using drafting film, you'll be getting to the probably at the end of your layering. Just bring in a little bit more dark over there. And I want to bring, in fact, I'm going to bring some of that Caput Mortem Violet in down at the bottom here, where we've got these sort of like dark spots in here as well. The other thing as well is if you sort of putting your colour in and it's going a little bit, it's looking a little bit flat, just check that you don't need to sharpen your pencil. Particularly on the smooth papers, you really do need a sharp pencil. It, you know, and I don't sharpen my pencil nearly as much as I should on hot press papers, but it really does make a difference. It really does make a difference. You know, you'll get to a point, you'd think this is sharp, but it's not really. I'm very lazy when it comes to sharpening, but it does make a big difference, and you get more pigment in a smaller area, so it then becomes denser. You know, so it's really worth. It's worth investing in a good pencil sharpener. I have two pencil sharpeners. I've got my Swordfish, and then I don't know where my other one's gone. I've got a little handheld. It's called the Cum Magnesium. It's disappeared. Just a little silver one. I think it's something like $2.99 from Amazon. Tiny one. That one is brilliant for sharpening tricky pencils. You know, the ones that break all of the time. So I've got that. This gives quite a long point. The little handheld one gives quite a short point. You know, that's kind of personal preference, really. But it is a good idea to have I started off with the crank sharpeners, so the handheld ones, and now because I'm drawing, you know, for quite a few hours, and I'm so lazy, I like to just shove it in the electric one, and it just does it for me. It's brilliant. I love my Swordfish multi-point. They are quite expensive, but I just love them. Okay, so you can see here we're coming quite dark down here, and we're starting to get a really nice, it's starting to really come to life now. Again, I'm just going to use the Caput Mortem Violet down here as well. Caput Mortem Violet, when you mix it with oranges and you mix it with yellows, it just deepens that. You end up with sort of like a burnt orange when you use it with an orange. It's such a flexible and useful pencil. Really, really is. And I'm going to bring a little bit of that dark cadmium orange in here as well, just along that top bit there. And I'm just going to go a little bit darker. So I'm pressing slightly harder. I'm using a little bit heavier pressure in there. And down here as well. Okay, and I'm just going to use my dark cadmium orange. So this is the difference between the cadmium orange and the dark cadmium orange. You can see this one's got an awful lot more reddy pigment in it. It's quite fluorescent. It's a beautiful colour. It's quite surprising how vibrant it is. And I'm just going to bring a little bit of that into here. It really is a very vibrant colour. Would you believe I'm using this as a skin tone on the piece that I'm drawing at the moment? Oh my goodness, I'm loving that piece. It's it's a girl who the lighting is outside. I think it's under sort of fluorescent lights, and her skin is this colour. It's awesome. I've kind of, you know, when you sort of fall in love with something all over again, it's brilliant. So I'm just going to bring a little bit more of that more vibranty orange into there as well, and just through here. Okay, and then let's have a look. We're going to use that terracotta again. I'm just going to bring a little bit more through in here, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to darken up the pupil area there, and we're going to start working in here, and then we can pull everything together. So coming through there. So I'm hoping you don't mind if we do run over a little bit. It'd be quite nice to get the actual eye area finished. It's, you know, I don't think anything of sort of sitting for 2 or 3 hours drawing, but I know that you know, if you're not used to drawing for that amount of time, it can be sort of like, oh, I need to get up and move around. And actually, we probably should have a little bit of a break. But okay, right. So before I do any more down here, let's just darken up this pupil area. I'm gonna use the dark sepia, which is the 175. My pupil's gone a little bit haywire. It's gone a little bit, that's a bit better. Let's get that in there. I'm just going to bring that little bit of terracotta back in there. I've gone, shaping's gone a bit. Right, so I'm going to use the dark sepia. Rather than a black or the blue, I'm going to use the dark sepia. Now, it's very dark at this side here, so we're going to go small pencil strokes, a little bit harder pressure, not crazy pressure. You don't want to be going through the paper or hurting your wrist or anything. And we're just going to sort of bring in a little bit of the texture, particularly along the top. So it's obviously like a tree line or something like that. And it sort of stops there. And then we're just going to come down. We might bring a little bit of black in over the top, but you can see straight away as soon as we bring that bit of you know, where it starts to get really, really nice and dark, it just changes the whole thing. It really then starts to look like it should. So actually bringing the darks in quite quickly is going to help. So I'm just going to go round and round. When we get to this bit, there's a little bit more sort of texture in there, and I do want to bring that in. So I'm just going to come around. Just going to sharpen that again. Okay, I'm just going to bring some little sort of tweaky bits out so that the pupil is, you know, it's a definite shape, but there are these sort of little bits that are sprouting out from it. Down here, so you can see my fingers are right down again at the bottom of my pencil, so I've got total control of where my pencil strokes are going. If I moved it right up so that there's a big distance between my fingers and the tip, I don't have as much control. So that's quite good for soft areas where you want to go a little bit softer, but I want to be really controlled with this. Okay, so I'm going to come in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift off my pressure a little bit. So we're still getting the dark coming through, but I'm just lifting off very, very lightly. So it just, we've got areas where it's a little bit darker and areas where it's a little bit lighter. So we are getting the texture of the field or whatever that it is that where the hair is. I'm just going to bring that quite strongly around there. And then I'm going to just bring a little tiny bit of, I'm going to try the yellow. Let's see what happens when I bring the little bit of the yellow in. That's okay. And then I'm going to bring a little bit of the black in and just kind of darken it even more. So I'm just going to use the black again and darken it on this side. So we've basically got sort of 3 layers there. We've got a layer of blue, we've got a layer of the dark sepia, and then I'm just bringing the black in, just not all over it, but just in areas, just to get that lovely rich depth. And then we can leave little bits like this. What we've got to be careful about with areas like this is, again, that the contrast, there's not too much contrast. So where you've got light area, where you've got a dark area, the distance between the light and the dark isn't too far away. If this is too light, then this is all going to look like catch lights and everything, and it's not going to work properly. So you've just got to be really, really careful there. Right, so let's bring a little bit of this blue in onto the top. And some of these little clouds. I'm going to use the ultramarine, and we haven't finished this bit yet, we're going to come back to this bit, but we're going to use the ultramarine. We're going to use the ultramarine actually. No, we're going to use the sky blue to begin with. So the sky blue is the 146. I'm just going to sharpen that. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're just going to sort of sketch a little bit of the bluey bits in across the whole of this catch light here. We're going to go around we're going to miss out those cloudy bits. So again, we're just going to use round pencil strokes, really, really nice and gently. And we're just going to sort of bring a little bit of the sky in. Following the reference photo, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just doesn't have to be perfect. What's good about this is we've got the eyelashes coming in over the top. Eyelashes, whiskers, anything like that that goes in over the top of something, they're brilliant because they disguise all sorts. You know, so if you've done a dog's mouth and it looks all a bit weird, as soon as you put the whiskers in, the weirdness disappears because the whiskers just disguise it all. You know, I'm not talking about scary white whiskers on a black cat. They're really scary. In art club in the academy, we all have to have a bit of we have to have gin and tonic before we attempt whiskers. We have to take deep breaths. But you know, for sort of like normal whiskers, it's you know, they can hide a multitude of of sins. Okay, so we've got these little bits here. You know, they're just fine. And then I'm just going to come through here as well. We've got, now what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to colour the clouds in with the sky blue. And then we're going to come around in here with the darker blue. Probably going to choose something like an indanthrine blue or something like that. So I'm now colouring the clouds rather than the sky. A little bit down here. So I'll just fill all of that in. I mean, in a way, you could just fill the whole lot, couldn't you? You could fill the whole pupil in with the sky blue if you wanted, and then bring the darker blue in over the top. But this way, we kind of get an idea of those scudding clouds coming in over the top here. I'm working on a photograph that's probably about 4 times bigger than this eye. So as well as sort of drawing what I'm drawing, I'm having to resize it as well in my head. For some reason, I don't seem to have an issue with that. You know, I've always been able to sort of do that okay. But you know, if you do find that that's a problem, having a reference photo as well. I've got working off an iPad, but having a reference photo as well as an iPad is works quite nicely. Right, so we've got the clouds and everything in there, which are looking good. We now need to darken this bit. We're going to use the indanthrine blue for this. So the indanthrine blue is the 247. Little bit brighter than if I show you it next to the dark indigo. I don't know if you can see that there, but it's a little bit brighter. It's a little bit more vibrant. And we've also got the ultramarine blue here as well, which is the 120. So I'm going to sharpen both of these. Okay, I think I'm going to bring the ultramarine in into the middle bit of the eye in here. So we're kind of coming into these white areas, which is the sky. Little tiny pencil strokes. And we're just going to come in. And we want to get that nice depth in there. The ultramarine is a really beautiful colour. Just bring it a little bit up around there. And I'm just going to bring this, it looks like a little angel in the sky. I'm just going to bring this right over to the edge here. Right up to the edge of the pupil. Okay. And then I'm going to bring a little bit into here as well. This is sort of slightly duller really, but I can bring a little bit of that dark indigo into here too. Just bring a little bit into there. And okay, bring another little bit of a layer in there so it's nicely sort of solid, and then just bring just sort of like a sketchy bit into that cloud underneath, and then I'm going to bring the dark indigo in. No, the Indanthrene blue, sorry. That's the 247. I'm just going to bring this up into the top here. So this is really nice and dark up here, but it's, like I said before, it's just more vibrant. The blue's more vibrant than the dark indigo. Just pull that around there. Now we want some nice sort of softish edges on those clouds, so we can go nice and hard around the edge there, get that really lovely vibrant colour in, and then when we start to hit the cloud bit, just lift your pressure up and just drift your pencil into the cloudy area, which will give you a little bit of blue, but you'll get that soft edge. Don't worry about getting, you know, everything absolutely perfect and all of the grain and everything like that in your paper gone. You know, you might be using a paper that has got quite a lot of grain. I think it just adds to the drawing. I think it's not a problem having grain in there. That looks quite nice. Mine's a little bit sharp around the edges, but actually I need to darken this area around here, and I'm just going to pull a little bit of through there. Good. Okay, so I've left the paper in there, and I'm just going to leave that for the time being, and see if I need to sort of bring an extra bit of colour into there. But now what I want to do is, again, I just want to work on this area down here, darken again into some of these areas, bring a little bit of black in, actually what I'm going to do is just bring a little bit of that dark indigo, just curve that round there a little bit more. Yeah, and then I just want to darken in here. So I'm going to use my terracotta, yeah, I'm going to use that terracotta again, which is the, what's that say, 186, and just sort of darken the top of the eye up here. What happens is when we start to kind of add colour, it's only when we've started to add the really dark areas that we realise how dark the other areas need to be. And I find this an awful lot. I still sort of struggle getting my darks dark enough right from the beginning. I find it quite scary. So I find doing it gradually is much more helpful. You know, we're going to be putting the layers in anyway, so kind of getting the darkness nice and, you know, gradually in there, rather than going hell for leather right from the beginning. Right, we're just going to get this really dark everywhere. It's much harder, and it's much harder, and it's much better and kinder to ourselves to do it a little bit more gradually. You know, because going in really, really dark right from the beginning is a little bit scary, because you think, well, what happens if I need to rub it out? You know, all of those sorts of things. Okay, right. So I'm going to bring this terracotta again a little bit more down here. Sort of quite in shadow down here. I might just bring a little bit of that raw umber in there as well, just to get that a little bit darker. So the raw umber, again, really great pencil. This is the 180. Again, it's more sort of like that yellowy greeny brown colour. Not as yellowy greeny brown as the brown ochre. It's a little bit more neutral. And I'm just going to bring a little bit of that around the pupil. So I just want to soften the pupil area a little bit around here. So almost expanding the pupil slightly. Just gently, gently going in there. And then I'm going to bring a little bit more of that out into there as well, just darken that out. So this area here that you know we saw as being really quite light actually is quite dark. And then when we darken this up, then we need to darken this area up. So it's like you just kind of keep going. And again, it can be a little bit frustrating, thinking, oh, just, you know, it feels like I'm layering forever. But actually, that's what I love about coloured pencils, is that the slowness, the mindfulness of it. You know, I don't sort of count my hours anymore. I've got to a point now with my drawing. It's really lovely, because when I first was doing commission work and everything, it you know, I'd always be sort of like on the clock, and I know that there are a lot of people like that. You're always like, well, I've got these drawings and I have to get it done by this time. And I've got to the point now with my, I'm just going to bring a little bit of dark around here. I've got to the point now with my commission business where I've stopped worrying about time. I've stopped worrying about how long something is going to take. So I might do a piece and it might be done in a couple of days. I might have a piece on my drawing board for a couple of weeks. But I've stopped worrying about time, and it's so lovely. This is the first year, in 6 years, 7 years, that I haven't been bogged down with Christmas commissions, because I've now structured my business so that I'm not, I take commissions in this period, but they're not commissions for Christmas. And, you know, as much as you can't really do that when you're just starting out with your commissions, you know, you take them and you've got them for Christmas, and it's all, you know, very important that you get them done. But I've now how I've structured my business, I don't need to do that. And this is the first time in 7 years where the run up to Christmas for me is so relaxed and lovely. It's just, I've got something on my drawing board that's just for me. I'm not recording it. I've seen the photograph, I fell in love with it, and it is just for me, and I'm loving it. And I'm not sort of thinking, oh, I've got to get this in the post. And, you know, the post this year has been just awful. And it's just been so much more relaxing. It's been lovely. And that's how I want to run my business, so that, you know, I don't have to be worrying about time and all of that kind of stuff. This is looking all right, isn't it? It's looking okay. You know, I bet you were all sitting there at the beginning thinking, Bonnie, this is rubbish. But yeah, a little bit more dark up here. And then I just want to go darker still in here. And again, I'm going to use my Caput Mortuum Violet. There are colours that I've chosen that we haven't even used. Caput Mortuum Violet again. There's some little areas where I just want to beef up. So down here, I just want to beef this up down here. Again, quite sharp, a little bit more pressure. You find as you work through the layers, you start off nice and gently and nice and light. And as you bring more layers into your drawing, your pressure needs to just increase a little bit. That is so that you can squash the pigment into the tooth. And it also is because you've got a better surface to draw on. You know, you've got not better surface, but a different surface because you've got those layers of pencil in there. You know, and you can kind of get, particularly with pastel mat and actually paper like this, it's quite difficult because if it's got a lot of tooth to get like a lovely clean line. But as you add more layers, you have more ability to be able to get cleaner lines in there. You know, and that's when you can just increase your pressure slightly and get the richer pigments and those cleaner lines if you need them. So this isn't this is sort of quite different to the photograph how it's ended up, but actually it's looking quite nice. Again down here, just bring a little bit more into there. Really liking this cadmium orange. I think that's worked really well. Okay, and then I'm going to bring a little bit of black in. So we're going to darken this down here even more with the black. So nice and sharp. This isn't sharp enough, so I'm just going to sharpen that up. And we're going to come down at the bottom of this. So this is where we want our really, really nice dark areas down here. Again, we're going to start at the base. So where it touches the eyelid, I'm just going to sort of shunt it up a little bit. So using the pencil up in an upwards motion and harder pressure at the edge where it's touching the eyelid, and then lifting your pencil pressure off so that you get less pigment further up so that you can still see the other colours underneath. For me, pressure is another really, really key part of coloured pencil drawing, and having quite dexterous pressure, being able to go from quite hard, so I'm going quite hard here, to just drifting off and going quite light, all in the same space of sort of like a couple of millimetres. If you can really practice with your pressure, so you can go hard, medium, light, hard, light, medium, you know, you're really dexterous with that pressure, it's going to be really, really helpful for coloured pencil drawing because you need all of those different pressures. You know, and you need to harden your pressure as you come up through the layers, because you're squashing the pigment into the tooth. A lot of the times people will say, I can't get the depth that you're getting. You know, my colours aren't as rich, and I'm like, well, that's because you're using soft pressure all the way through, and you just need to harden your pressure a little bit. You'll also find with papers like this that your pigment sometimes can disappear before your very eyes. And again, it's due to pressure. You just need to add a little bit more pressure. Pressure's good in the right places. I think that can be said for everything in life, can't it, really? So we're just going to darken up around here as well. We don't want to lose that lovely sort of browny orangey glow, but we want this darkness to come around here. You know, the darks and the lights are so important, particularly when drawing eyes. Okay, this is looking really nice actually. So I want to tickle this little bit up here. We've left that, we isolated that right at the beginning, didn't we? So I just want to tickle that little bit up with a bit of grey. I've got a warm grey 4 here. I'm just going to pop that in. It's very deceiving when we're using coloured pencil to look at something and go, that's a highlight, so it means it's white. And it's not. It isn't white. You know, so but now we can see it's not white, and we can put like a little bit of a grey in there. And I'm just going to come down into this little bit here and work here as well. So I've got a question here from Vicky that is, how do I choose colours? And I think, like I was saying before, I think this is something that people really get hung up about, and then they get themselves into a bit of a panic about colour, and then they pick up something like a colour picker app, which I don't really. I'm all for things helping you, and I think if you want to use a colour picker app, use a colour picker app. I can think of better things to use than a colour picker app, because colour picker apps can give you some very strange results. So what I would do when I'm choosing colour, I would look for the lightest colour I can see, whatever it is that I'm drawing, whether it's an eye, whether it's some fur, you know, whatever it is. I'd look for the lightest colour I can see. Okay. And I'd find a colour that was the same as that with my pencils. I would look for the darkest colour I can see. Say we're doing like a piece of fur or something like that. And again, I would look at, I'm just going to darken this with the black here, very softly, so that we're just going over the top of the colour and the black is just darkening it rather than it being black. So I'd look for the darkest colour I can see, and I'd find a colour pencil that represents that colour. So I'd literally just go into my colour pencil jar and I'd go, oh, that looks a little bit like it. I'll choose that one. And then I'll choose a something sort of like a mid-tone, a colour in the middle. So a dark, a light and a middle colour. You know, for obviously you might have different colours for different areas of the actual animal, but that, you know, if you're drawing a patch of fur or something like that, that's gonna work quite nicely. Then what I'll do is I'll choose some colours that will work nicely with those for things like shadows. So say we're drawing a ginger dog, you know, a tan coloured dog. I might choose these as my colours. So I might go light, dark, medium, okay? And then what I want to do is I want to choose colours that are going to go with these for the little bits in between. So I might go, well, I need some really, really dark colours for the very, very dark areas. So then I might choose like a Caput Mortem Violet to go in there. So the Caput Mortem Violet, then I know is going to work nicely with all of these because they're all sort of similar hue, you know, the colour mixes that are in them. And then I might think, well, I need something that's going to be that's going to work nicely in there, but for like just a couple of areas where it's like really, really vibrant. Again, I might then choose to use a terracotta as a slightly vibranty orange or a yellow. And then as you kind of progress in understanding your pencils, you might then go, well, hang on a second, I've got my oranges here. I know that complementary colours are going to work really, really well with for shadows and stuff like that. But I do know when I mix, so the opposite of orange is blue. So your complementary colour for orange is blue. But I know that if I mix blue with orange, it's going to go green, which I don't want. So I'm going to then look sideways on my colour wheel and I'm going to choose a split complementary, which is going to be like a violet-y colour. So then I'm going to choose something that's like a violet colour. I'm just picking this out just for, so this is a Holbein sea fog. I probably wouldn't use this, but you can see these two colours are going to complement each other absolutely beautifully. You know, this over the top of that is going to give you some really lovely shadows. And that's how you learn your colours. You get your colour wheel, you understand the relationship between your opposite colours, and you just play around with colour. You just play around with it, and it's wonderful. And you make a list, or you write it down, or you do whatever, and you remember this worked well with that, and that worked well with this, and that's how you learn how to use colour. That is exactly, I've got my terracotta here, that is exactly how I learnt to use colour. I had no idea. I was in the print world for quite a long time, so I knew about colour mixing, but I didn't know how to mix my colour pencils at all. You know, my first attempts were, well, it's a brown horse, so I'm going to use a brown colour. And it was only through, I had a critique with Lisa Clough, Lacquerie Fine Art. I was very, very lucky to get a critique on one of her YouTube critique sessions. Very lucky. And it was a cockapoo that she was critiquing for me, and she said the most wonderful things and really lifted my confidence. And she was talking about some of the yellowy orangey colours that I'd used in it and what I could use in the shadows. And I'd been using like a dark brown in the shadows because it looked dark brown. On the photograph, it looked dark brown. And she said, you know what, if you used a magenta or a purple on top of those orangey colours, it would look amazing. And I was like, oh my goodness. So that's when I started to kind of really look at my colours. So it's about asking questions, it's about practicing, it's about experimenting, it's about playing, and you'll find the colours that suit you. So I have my core colours. I have jars of pencils next to me, and all of the pencils that I use all of the time are there. But my core pencils might be very different to another artist's core pencils because they love using other different colours. You know, and you find your own, and it's about not being scared. you know, don't be scared to just have a play with colour. If you know that blue and yellow make green and you don't want green, then don't use blue and yellow together. Otherwise, apart from blue and yellow, you know, actually all of the animal-y type colours work really beautifully together. They do work really, really nicely together. Right, so I'm just going to take my sky blue and I'm just going to very gently sort of nudge out a little bit of this. I just want to sort of fade it out a little bit. Just soften that a little bit, that's good. And then we're just going to work on the outside of the eye a little bit. Now, we're coming up to 1 minute to 9, so anybody who wants to disappear... What's that I've just dropped? Oh, it's not. Caput Mortem Violet, hang on. Anybody who wants to disappear, don't worry, it's all being recorded and you'll get it tomorrow. But anybody who's, you know, a bit bit brave, we can carry on for just a little bit longer. Yeah, so I'm going to take my black and we're just going to darken up into the bottom of the eyelid area here. And again, I'm very, very happy to ask any questions. You know, Vicky's being amazing at helping me with this and asking my questions. You are amazing, Vicky. I have to tell you, you are absolutely brilliant. Because it's quite difficult to sort of watch, chat and draw at the same time. So having somebody like Vicky is just wonderful. So I'm just coming in here on the bottom of this, the eyelid. I want to keep some of those little highlights in there. So I'm just going to work my dark into the highlight so that they're still there, but I don't want to end up with big sharp lines of colour. And that's the tricky bit with this. It's about getting the, I've got a little bit of a highlight there as well. Can you see just on the bottom bit there? I'm just going to leave that in. And then we're just going to sort of, again, it doesn't have to be exactly the same as the, you know, what's in the photograph, but it's coming through there. I'm just going to round this off a little bit. Sometimes the line art can go a little bit astray. I'm just going to round that bit off there. It's made quite a nice difference actually. And going through there. So I'm hoping that some of you are going to be joining me in January when the Academy opens. I'm very excited about it all. I've got some amazing projects that we're going to be working on. So I've just done the line arts for our art club subjects that we're going to be doing. So the first subject of 2023 is going to be sort of like a couple of weeks. It's only going to last a couple of weeks, the subject. And we're drawing a human ear. We're getting into drawing humans in the Academy now. We're all getting very excited about it. And I have never ever wanted to draw humans. It's all been animals. And the majority of my tutorials are animals. That's what I kind of concentrate on. But we've all got really, really excited about drawing humans, and it's really strange how, you know, I've had this huge passion for animals, and I've like, no, humans, no, not into those at all. And then all of a sudden, I've started drawing the humans, and then my students, you know, some of them are like, Bonny, I don't want to draw humans, let's just draw animals. And then we do some together in art club and everything, and they're like, oh, I'm really enjoying these humans. Because there's no fur. There's no, well, apart from the hair, there's no fur. So we're just kind of drawing smooth. And I tell you what, there's some fantastic photos that I've sourced that we're going to be using. And it's just really interesting. And the funny thing is, I found that my animal portraits have developed even more now that I've started drawing humans. I don't know why. I don't know whether it's because I'm having to take a little bit more care and attention, because obviously when you're drawing humans, you can't kind of, you know, if they've got a wonky nose, you kind of know they've got a wonky nose. Yeah, honestly, we really love it. And the pieces that are coming from the community, from the students in the Academy, are phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And then they're like, I've seen a piece today where it's like, oh, you know, I've been practicing with Bonny doing humans, and now I'm doing my own, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, flipping heck, that's good. You know, it's fantastic how you know, one person's passion can then get other people, you know, increasing their passion as well. So it's amazing. Oh, I've got my throat going. And we're doing a few more flowers as well, which is good. I've got one full tutorial, botanical tutorial in the academy, and I want to do more because I really enjoyed that as well. Really enjoyed that. My voice is going a bit funny now. Yeah, so we're doing the human ear, and then we've got I think starting on the 17th of January in Art Club again, we're drawing a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. I've been sent the most beautiful photograph. It was somebody who was wanting a commission, and I can't fit any more commissions in now until 2024. But it was such a nice photo, and I've struggled to get photos of Cavalier King Charles. I have wanted to do one in the past, that I've just said to her, right, if we can use it as a tutorial, then you can have the original once I've done it. So that's what we've done, which is brilliant, because it's a lovely photo. Oh, I'm gonna have to have a bit of a cough in a minute. My voice is obviously telling me I need to shut up soon. So just coming down here a little bit, and then my main tutorial for the beginning of the new year is it's the most fantastic wolf. Again, it's not from like Pixabay or anything like that. It's actually a photographer who's got in contact with me and said, did I want to draw it? And it's the most stunning photograph, and I cannot wait to start it. I just can't wait. It's going to be amazing. I'm so excited about it. Yeah, so if you want to draw an ear and a Cavalier King Charles and a wolf, come and join me. And then we're going to, I think we're going to revisit, in my confidence sessions, we're going to revisit things like we did a brilliant session last year on it's like a coaching thing, the shield, and then we did our mood boards, our dream boards and everything, which was lovely, worked really well. So I'm going to revisit some of those. The confidence sessions have been amazing. They can get quite emotional, because obviously everybody's sort of emotions run quite high with stuff like that. You know, if you're lacking confidence and everything, it can be really hard to do what you want to do. You know, right. So I'm going to do a little bit of fur around the outside, and then we'll come back and we'll tweak bits in the middle. So I've got another question here. Can I explain the simple coloured pencil course? Yes, I can. Now, what colour am I going to use here? I'm going to use the raw umber. I think I'm going to use as the initial colour. I'm not going to draw all of the fur, just a bit of a semblance of it. That's the 180. 180? Yeah. So the super simple coloured pencil course is it's for people who haven't used coloured pencil before. They're very new to coloured pencil, basically. It's I think it's 4 or 5 hours. There are a few modules. I'm using very light pressure here, and what I'm doing is I'm actually just bringing in some of the texture of the fur. It might look like I'm drawing every hair, but I'm not really. It just happens that the hairs are the same width as a pencil line. So again, I'm being quite sketchy. So there are initial layers to the initial modules to the super simple coloured pencil course that basically go through pencils. So it shows you all of the different pencils that I use, and I talk about them and I get them out and I use them. I also give you some idea on budget brands, so not using polychromos, but I also do a review on Castle Arts Soft Touch and Lyra Polycolour pencils, which are the Lyra Polycolour are a really good pencil actually, and they're not overly expensive. the Castle Arts, whilst not light fast, or they don't have light fast ratings, they've got some really good information with their pencils, really good information. You get some little tutorials with them, you get a workbook with them. They're really good, and you get like a nice pack with them as well, a case with them. So I'd review those, and then I also review paper. So I take you through different surfaces, what the surfaces are like, why we use them. I talk a little bit about sort of like different techniques and everything, and I also take you through some of the materials, tools that we use, like pencil sharpeners and erasers and all of that kind of thing. So you've got those as all of the initial modules, and then you have one tutorial, which is a cat is a cat. It's the two eyes, and there's sort of like a block. It's probably about 7 inches by 3 inches, something like that. And you draw the eyes and you draw the fur. And it's a really, really nice tutorial using simple techniques. So it's not crazily in depth or anything like that. It's just using nice, simple techniques. And that's the super simple colour pencil course. So that's something that you can buy off my website. In the academy, I've got something called my foundations course. So if you are planning on joining me, then you get access to my foundations course. That's over 7 modules, and it's about 40 hours. You don't have to complete it all, but it's a certificated course. So if you do complete it, then you get a certificate, and that has got modules on confidence, modules on mindset, modules on pencils and paper, again a little bit more in depth, and then you have a range of tutorials on a range of different surfaces, so that you get to use different surfaces, different techniques, different pencils, and at the end you've got the last module is my German Shepherd. Not my German Shepherd, but my German Shepherd. I haven't got a German Shepherd. The German Shepherd tutorial, and that's the last module. And it just gives you a really, really good understanding of coloured pencils, different techniques that you can use on different surfaces. It gives you an idea of the surfaces, which means that you've had a go and you've had a play and you've drawn something on smooth paper, on pastel mat, and on drafting film, so that you can then choose and you can say, do you know what, I love doing the stuff on the hot press paper, that is my paper, I'm going to concentrate on that now. Or you can say, oh, I absolutely love pastel mat, it just clicked with me. Or, drafting film is what I want to use. It gives you the techniques that you can use on those different surfaces, which is great. And then of course you've got all of my everything else in the academy, which is extensive. So you don't have to do the foundations, but it is definitely worth it. And do you know, I've seen the most incredible results coming from people who've never drawn before in their life. Right, I'm just going to talk about this here. Sorry, I got onto a roll there. You see this hair down here is really, really, really important that our fur goes in the direction of the growth of the fur. So you can see how I've come up here, we've kind of got a little bit spiky, and then it's come down and the hair has come down here. So when we think about the 3 things really for realism, we think about the values, really, really important, lights and darks. We think about, what else do we think about? We think about the fur direction. Really important to get the fur direction correct, because the fur direction is going to allow us to see what is underneath the fur. It's going to really show us the structure of the animal. So when we're putting the fur direction in here, and like I say, it does look like I'm just drawing every hair. I'm not really. We're just we want the curve, we want the angle, we want all of that coming through in our fur. It's really, really, really important. More so on smooth animals, if you're drawing sort of like a smooth coated dog or something like that, getting the fur direction on the face is going to mean the difference between a dog that looks, say if you're drawing a staffy or something where you've got a very broad face, very smooth fur, if you get your fur direction going in the right way, and your dips and your curves and your angles, you're going to get something that looks like a staffy. If you get it wrong, you can end up with it looking like he's got puffed out cheeks. So it's really, really important to get those fur lines in the right direction. How do I transfer art? So I use a projector mostly. This piece here, I printed out my line art. So I created my line art on my iPad digitally. And, oh gosh, my voice is going hard. And I printed it out. And then I flipped over my printout. And I put graphite on the back of it. I just scribbled back graphite on the back of it. And then I flipped it over, and then I traced over the top of it, so the graphite transferred to my paper. That's the easiest way to do it, or you could use pastel. I tend to, with my big drawings, and that's what I've done with this, with my big drawings on pastel mat, I tend to project my line art. So I've got a projector. Mine's the Artograph Inspire, which they don't make anymore, sadly. And I project my line art onto my paper, and that's how I do it. It just makes life an awful lot easier. So I'm just bringing a little bit of this hair through here. Just bringing a little bit around there as well. I think that's worked out really, really nicely, actually. I'm quite pleased with it. So my little voice at the beginning of the session, where it was looking a tad revolting, I was like, Bonny, what are you doing? pretend that your Wi-Fi's failed and just switch everything off. No. And this is how I would start realistic fur. We're obviously going a little bit sketchy here, but this is how I would start my realistic fur. I get an idea of the fur here, which is actually, I really like this. I think this is nice. Can you see here where I've left out this little bit of a highlight here? As you do more drawings, you will naturally do stuff automatically. It will just come to you. So I've left this little bit of a highlight there, which is lovely. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring a little bit of the terracotta, I think, down into the bottom here. I'm just going to bring a little bit more of that orangey colour down. We're going to stop in a minute. You'll all be very pleased to know. I hope you've enjoyed it. I love drawing, and I love talking about drawing. I think probably, as you've noticed, and if you haven't drawn with me before, I do hope you've enjoyed it. This is what my tutorials are like. When I'm doing a tutorial, I do tend to go very much into depth about, right, we're just going to put this bit here. I'm going to use a little bit more pressure here. The reason I'm using this colour is we could use an alternative colour, but my thinking is, and when I record my tutorials, I record and I speak over them at the same time. So I don't record it and then put the voice in afterwards. And what's really nice about that is that you get all of my thinking. So I'll start with something, I'll go, right, we're just going to use this. And then I'll be like, oh, hang on a second. No, I don't think we're going to use that because blah, 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 blah. You also get me making mistakes and correcting my mistakes. I've got a hilarious cat one. I've got a few hilarious ones. I've got a hilarious cat one where I'm trying to do these flipping white whiskers, and anyway, it ended up not being a tutorial on how to do whiskers, but it ended up being a tutorial on, do you know what? It's okay if you go wrong and you cock something up. And that's what it ended up being, which was quite good. I've just done a little Labrador, chocolate Labrador puppy, and we had to sort of take out a leg, or part of a leg, and knowing how to do that is really good. Understanding that you can make changes, and just because you've made a mistake, doesn't mean the whole thing's ruined. And I think as well, when you see more experienced people making mistakes, you realise that we're just all human. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. And I'm so laid back with everything that, I'm just like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll do. And hopefully some of that, non-perfectionism will rub off on people, because it does make things a lot nicer. You know, it's a much more, then your drawings stay fun. You know, I've been drawing for coming up to 7 years, and every single piece I've done I've enjoyed doing, and I haven't ever fallen out of love with my drawings ever. I've just loved every minute of it. Right, before we go, you are going to be here till midnight. I'm just going to take my walnut brown, and Vicky, is everybody okay, or has everyone left? Am I drawing on my own? I'm just going to bring a little bit of the walnut brown, which is the 177, and we'll just bring a little bit of the darker fur texture through here. I might change my mind and use dark sepia. I'm just going to use that walnut brown for now, just so that we get an idea of the, you know, the fur, so it looks a little bit something like. Coming through there. Obviously, if we were doing the fur and everything, we'd then have to concentrate sort of quite heavily on getting this fur looking a little bit more fur-like. But I just want to bring these sort of shorter hairs in here, really. Vicky says you're all happy. That's good. Oh dear. Don't want to be scaring anybody off. So on New Year's Day we're going to be doing the it's actually a different photograph. We're going to be drawing more sort of like the head of a hare. We're going to be going a little bit faster. I'll try not to do it so that everybody's, you know, too scared to draw. And the reason that I do these speedy drawings is actually because it stops you from overthinking, and it stops you from getting scared about stuff. That's the main reason that I do these speed drawings. I'd be really happy to do a 6-hour session. And just, you know, I wouldn't blink at that. It would be great. But actually, doing these speedy sessions are brilliant because you don't have time to think. You don't have time to think, oh gosh, you know, I need to do this and I need to do that. It's just like, you know, off we go. And it's, so there's definitely method in my madness when it comes to the speed drawings, because it stops you from that sort of perfectionism and that overthinking and everything. And it's fun. We like fun. Oh, I like this little hair. I think he's worked out quite nicely. The last thing I want to do is just bring a little bit of yellow in, I think. I'll probably end up ruining it now. I just want to bring a little bit of that yellow in. So it's the dark cadmium yellow. It's the 108. Just going to bring a little tiny bit of that in. If you don't want to bring it in, don't. If you're thinking, no, Bonnie, it's going to ruin it. You know, you don't have to. But I just wanted to bring just a little touch of that in, just to get a little bit of just a little bit of colour in around the edge there. So yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed this. I'd love to see if you have drawn along with me and you have got you know, you've got to a stage where you know, you're not tinkering around with it. I'd love to see you post it. I'd love you to tag me in it. If you have Instagram, if you post it in your story and you tag me, I will share it. If you tag me in your Instagram or Facebook, you know, in a post, then you know, hopefully I'll find it and I'll comment or like it or whatever. And you know, if you want to post it in my groups or anywhere else on the internet, if you make sure that you credit Sue Cross Wildlife as the originator of the photograph. Very important that we credit her, because she's so kind in letting us use her photos. And you know, if you credit me as well for the live draw, that would be really, really amazing. You can use a hashtag as well, so it could be something like hashtag Bonny's live draw. Yeah. And then I can see what you've been doing. I'm just going to put a little bit extra up here. This is the problem, isn't it? You're like, I'll just do this bit here and I'll just do this the bit there. But I've loved this. I've really, really loved drawing with you. thank you all for joining me. It's been so super. I love doing the live draws anyway, and hoping to see some of your fabulous pieces. I hope you have a very, very lovely festive season. I'm just going to use my coal grey one here. I've just decided I just want to smooth over this bit here. Just very gently smooth into there, just so that that's a little bit smoother rather than being too textured. Yes, I hope you all have a lovely Christmas, festive season, and hopefully I will catch you on New Year's Day when we're going to be doing another live draw. I think the pencil colours are very similar. I'm probably going to be using the light fast paper again. Hope you've enjoyed this. It is recorded. Oh, we haven't put the eyelashes in. Oh, we'll just put the eyelashes in really quickly. I'm so sorry. I'm going to use the dark sepia. No, I'm not. I'm going to use black. I'm going to be very brave, and we're just going to put some eyelashes in. They need to go in. We can't not put them in. So sharp, and we're just going to whisk them in. God, can you believe that? I talked about the importance of the eyelashes and how they hid a multitude of sins, and then we just forgot to put them in. So we're just going to bring them in there. Literally just whisk them in. Nice sharp pencil. You want to have a nice sharp pencil for this. And we'll just whisk them in over there. And they actually do make quite a big difference. Bring them in, and then they kind of curve around that way there. Best thing to do with whiskers is just go for it. Just go for it. And once you've put one or two in, that's it. You could draw whiskers all day, every day. You know, you just get that muscle memory. If you're too scared to put the whiskers in, practice on a piece of paper next to it. Just practice the motion of the whiskers. And then as you start to get a little bit more confident with the motion of the whiskers, just move your hand over and draw them on the actual piece. There we go. We've got the whiskers in there. Marvellous. Thank you all ever so much for joining me. It's been really, really super. I'm going to go off and get my tea now. Have a super, super Christmas, festive season, whatever you're doing. Hopefully catch you on New Year's Day, and hopefully some of you will come and join me on the 3rd of January as well in the Academy. But thank you all so much for joining me. Okay, see you later. Bye.